have a lot of statements we say in casting, that a career is a marathon, not a sprint. Right. There's not one path to success. It's an art, and it is an artist's journey. And I think that is challenging. Hi,
Hello.
Thank you for coming over today.
Thank you for having me. This is really fun.
As you know, I'm Tiffany Little Canfield, casting director, or co-cast director, along with Josh Einson for Paradise.
Right. I'm Jon Beavers, and you put me in that show. So thanks.
Very happily, of course.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about when we first met. And so I kind of want to tell you, because I think I may know actually more about this than you do.
Yeah, I was wondering, because this is the first time we worked together. It was Paradise. Yes. But I know that, and then we had the whole casting process, saw you for the first time in the Zoom. But we knew each other, and I knew we did. And it has something to do with our show, with The Unfortunates, right?
With The Unfortunates.
Did we meet?
I believe we met. We didn't go out for food or anything afterwards, but I believe we did meet in a room with many people. But someone I went to,
or was it down here?
Who was in San Francisco at ACT.
Right. Okay, cool.
And so I saw the show that you created, The Unfortunates, and I think we met really briefly. And then when I was casting Paradise, this role of Billy Pace came up. And Dan was really clear, what were the qualities he was looking for. But as he was describing them, I remember Josh and I were sort of like, who is this? Who do we know? Especially someone in Los Angeles, and not somewhere else, someone here. No one just had the specific quality that we were looking for. And I remember I actually thought maybe this is an actor that's on the kind of show that I'm not familiar with. Really masculine men, kind of like what's the most recent version of Friday Night Lights or something like that. And so I started to go, and this is something I do as a casting director often, is I'll go to IMDb Pro and look up shows that maybe there's an actor on it that I do know. But I think actors that might be in a show, and I think I thought of someone like Jim Perrick or someone like that, and
absolutely.
I somehow hit on, I think it was Animal Kingdom. And I just looked down the cast list and I said, who don't I know? And when I saw your picture and your thumbnail, on IMDb Pro, I realized I didn't recognize you as the person I saw in Unfortunates. So I just thought this was a new person.
Oh, cool.
So I said, let's set this guy up to read, and we got your initial self-tape, right?
Yep.
You turned in a self-tape.
Yeah, I did.
It was great. And then, did we Zoom too?
We did.
You Zoom with the
Yes, we Zoomed. It was just me and you and Dan Fogelman, which is, it was me in my living room with my laptop propped up on some books.
That's right. Because I think you weren't in LA, right?
No, I was actually.
You were.
I was.
I wonder why we didn't do it, because we did do some callbacks in person with John and Glenn before the test. And then we did the test. But that was when we first met, was on the Zoom in this new life, not years and years ago at the theater.
Yeah. And so I knew you were casting this. And then when I got to go in, I'm always trying to throw, impressive stuff in front of you.
Yeah.
And so then when we jumped on the Zoom, I knew that we were in each other's orbit, but you reminded me that we had met during.
And I'm sure that's because of a really well-timed text from Ian Merrigan,
Could have been
saying, "Oh my gosh, you've seen John again." And I was wait, what? And then he said, "Remember the play?" And I was like, "This is the same person." I don't think I had put them together.
The whole thing, what's cool about this conversation and these conversations is that the whole thing makes me even more aware of the fact that when you're stumbling through a series of events that you call a career, and you're working here and you're working there and you're working on Animal Kingdom for John Wells, but you're doing theater at ACT, and all these things feel piecemeal, that there are other artists that are in your world and somewhat in your orbit, and they can see a connective tissue that you could recognize. Oh, I'm looking for this quality, and he's also from theater, so there'll be some range there. And the kinds of things that you're sometimes feeling as an actor, you're begging someone out there to please recognize me at all, much less recognize that I am multiple things. And that does happen because I think of fans, supporters. Like you are you are a dynamic artist and director and actor, in my opinion. We'll get to that later. But also to be a curator of people and talent and a tastemaker. You know, it's encouraging, especially as we move more and more into self-tape land, to get to have a conversation that goes, oh, wait, all of those things contributed to my being in your consciousness for this moment, you know?
It kind of adds up, right?
It does,
it really does add up. And I think that we have a lot of statements we say in casting, you know, that a career is a marathon, not a sprint.
Right.
Right. There's not one path to success. It's it is an artist's journey. And I think that is challenging. And I find it especially in Los Angeles because we're so close to the business side.
Yeah.
Here, actors are very savvy here about the process. They probably have friends that they may have met in their side job who are pitching scripts, right? Who are young writers, burgeoning writers or directors. And where I feel like in New York, there isn't quite the closeness all the time to the show business side of business. It's much more of a theater town.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of film and TV. You know, you think of 1970s independent film when you think of New York, right? But there's a lot of different kinds of work that is done there. Yeah. But it does feel more of like a different kind of community in the sense that I think everyone lives in, you know, an 11-mile island.
Right.
Everyone hangs out 3 miles of it, so you're just bumping into people.
Right, yes.
Where I think in Los Angeles, you have to be much more targeted because of how spread out it is and how people get places on their car as opposed to, you know, obviously the lore about you can't meet someone who lives in a different part of town. You'll never see them.
Yeah, someone said, remember, Los Angeles is only 2 hours from Los Angeles.
Yes.
I thought that was funny.
Exactly.
But your perspective on that, the difference between New York and LA, is especially keen because you've split your career between those two cities, right? And
I know. I just had my 10-year anniversary.
Amazing.
Opening the LA office.
So congratulations, 10 years. That's a big thing. But largely, I mean, the Bernie Telsey West Coast operation is largely because you came here and set the template.
And it's grown, and we have an amazing team now. But it started because of family. You know, often we as artists have to make choices to, you know, support the people in our lives.
Absolutely.
and their hopes and dreams as well. See, that's the biggest difference I could say is from a casting director standpoint, when I was in New York, we'd be on conference calls with studio execs and development people and never meet them. We just not even know who was speaking at any time on the call. Right. And now we have in-person, you know, concept meetings and tests, you know, which can lead us to a little bit. Like we have to talk, the show's called The Callback. We have to talk about your callback.
Talk about tests.
So we were testing you for that part. And
what a crazy process.
Yeah, we did it in person, and it was actually on the Fox lot, right? In there, but under 20th, you know, but at the Fox lot.
I was there with 2 other guys reading for Billy and 3 women reading for Jane.
Right.
And that's where I first met Nicole, Brandon Bloom.
Yes, exactly. Who I had first seen in a series that my New York office and colleagues Bernie Telsey and Adam Caldwell cast called The Gilded Age.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yes, and her character, is really important, season 1, and I always wanted to come back.
Yeah. She's terrific.
She's really great on that.
Do you find yourself obsessively tracking those kinds of things? Is there a section of your brain dedicated to, I've seen a person that's not on everyone's radar, and I'm aware of where the break in their contract may be coming? Is that
yes,
wow.
I am definitely someone, especially if I'm lucky enough to, you know, have it be in our own office. Yeah. That's always, I feel like, a secret thing is that I know I can find out what they're really doing. Yeah. And if there's any shenanigans, I call them shenanigans, we can do to make both shows work or something like that. Yeah. I remember on This Is Us, we were really struggling for the role of Toby. And I knew Chris Sullivan from New York.
What a genius.
And he's amazing. And from the theater. And he was on a show called The Nick.
Right, yeah.
And I had just done a pilot called I'm Dying Up Here. And I was able to get Michael Angarano on it.
Who I love.
Which was assigned to me that maybe they were letting other actors file a contract. So I said to Dan and John and Glenn, what if we hire Chris as a guest star for the pilot with an option upon pickup if we get picked up? Wow. Because he could do a guest star now. Wow. And I believe that he will be free to be a series regular.
See, and this is, I guess, again, just to hit this point, because I feel like, actors who may be watching this, the thing is that we just feel so often that we exist in a vacuum. But I'm sure Chris wasn't aware that he's on your radar and that you're monitoring when his contract, he's wondering if he'll ever work again, because that's what everyone does when their job is coming to an end. And to know that like somebody is scheming for you, with you, is really encouraging. And some of that sense of our interconnectedness with you guys.
Everyone wants to be working all the time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that is the dream and the goal. And I think that now that we have shorter orders in television, you can be a lot more creative with the scheduling than you could have back in the day when it was more like 23 episodes a season. Now we can be. And I feel like our partners at the studio and networks understand that as well. And we are really able to have a much more open conversation than where I used to feel it was sort of like, oh, series regular on something? No, not available.
Totally.
Just completely shut the door. That's kind of part of the fun part is making things work. I think part of casting we really get involved with is the problem solving. But with your callback, one of the things that happened was we went through the process with the various actors who were in and mixed and matched, and then we were ready to release everybody. And Dan really loved, he loved your Zoom and he loved your callback. And it was really clear that you could have chemistry with anyone.
That's
because all of the auditions felt really successful. But he suddenly said to me, we just wrote a scene for this character opposite, our female lead Sinatra. Is there any way we could give it to Jon and have him come in and read it? And I was like, I'm sure it is. So I went out and said, don't go anywhere. Please stay here. And then he had, we printed it and I looked at it and it was something like 3 or 4 pages. It was a real, and a 2-hand scene.
Good little chunky
It was a really good scene. And I was like, oh boy, okay, this is a lot. And I basically said, Dan, I'm going to ask him to do this, but this is really a ice cold read and this is a really tricky scene. So if it doesn't go well, I'm going to really fight that we give this guy 2 days and come back in this room again and do the scene.
It's very sweet of you to protect me.
And he was like, absolutely, I know he just got it. Dan is the greatest.
He is. He's
and
wonderful.
So everyone, and Jon and Glenn were like, no, we know, we just want him to take a look at it. And so I came out, I gave you the scene, I go back in, Dan and I literally take a pencil and cross through, so I'm not, saying a monologue, cross through the scene lines that we don't need for Sinatra to say, which I think took about 2.5 minutes.
Sure.
And then I came out and I said, do you want to go into that weird room and we can practice, we can rehearse a bit? And you were like, I'm ready to go. And I was like, what?
Well,
you said you were ready to go. And I was like, you got this 2 minutes ago. And you went in and you nailed it.
Okay. Yes. Thank you very much. But I'm not going to leave out a very important part of the story for me was you came out, I represented that I was as ready as I could be, but you still invited me to go ahead and read through the scene with you, which was very, very helpful, and that you were going to do it with me. People don't know how trained you are as an actor. Your high school was an art school, right? Wasn't it? So you had an entire training there, and then you trained as a director at North Carolina School of the Arts. So obviously your attention is on helping me, but that just means I'm working with an actor and a director at the same time, and we were reading in a way that made me feel like, oh, this lifts, and it's a dance. It's 2 people, and so I'm the one the camera's pointed at. But had you not been you, I don't think that it jumps off the page the way that it does. I really don't think that, and that's how I tell the story every single time. I don't know if you remember, but you pointed. It's the scene. If anybody has seen this, it's you better send the biggest MFer you've got, right? That. Really turning point scene for Billy. There's a moment where she says, where I say, that's my family. X's kids, that's my family. And you said that's the turning point in the scene. You just offhandedly were like, we were reading through it and you're like, obviously that's the turning point in the scene. And, honoring me, you know this, but you were really giving me really subtle direction, like dig in there, land that line, and then the rest of the scene will springboard you into the end. I can be as good as I want to be in practice and whatever, but somebody outside of you going, hit it there, stick it, and then, just a wink before we go in.
Well, I felt like we just had to do it so fast. We had to just cut to the chase, right? We had to go what can we figure out together right now?
Yeah. Somebody who recognizes that quickly the architecture of a scene, because so much of it is comprehending what the writer is doing, right? Versus getting lost in the language immediately, which you can do when you're picking something up and going, oh, I would say this that way. Why would I say this? And what is the intention? And what is the ultimate rhythm of the scene going to feel like? It takes a little while to internalize that. And I had somebody working with me going, it's here. You put your foot down here, and then you can make the jump to the end, you know?
Yeah.
And that matters a lot, Tiffany. And so everybody tells the story. Like I, you know, the rest of the story is I go back in and I do the audition, and everybody's really impressed, and I've only been out for 5 or 10 minutes or however they tell it, but like
2 minutes.
we
It
were
was crazy.
We were collaborating, and that makes a big difference. It really does. And it's not just to flatter you, although I hope you're receiving that.
I'm sure.
No, but it's also to say, like, this is, you know, right now the process is we start with a tape, and then the callbacks tend to be in person or Zoom or whatever, but the relationship between an actor and a casting director is so valuable for that reason, right? Because if I know someone who's on my team is helping me figure out how best this fits on me, and has the language to help me understand that. Like, so let me ask you to just elaborate, because I love when you talk about this. Like, why casting? Was that ultimately where you found yourself, and how does that pull together all of your skill set and activate them all at the same time?
Well, what's funny is when I first moved to New York, you know, I came from Sacramento, California. My dad was a policeman. You know, my mom worked for the state. We didn't really have any kind of artists, people who had pursued arts in our family in the past. And I think my quote from my parents when I said I was going to go to drama school was, "You're choosing homelessness."
That's a
may have been a direct quote.
That's a good
I'm sure
line.
she'll deny it, but I believe it may have been true. And so, and you know, it was at acting school that I was like, I love the art form, but this isn't it. Because I'm a pain in the ass. When I was in a play and I didn't think it was good, I was not happy. And it radiated.
Oh, that's funny.
I was a snob even then.
That's funny. So even as an actor.
Oh, when I was an actor in a school, I could tell at the table read, this thing isn't going to work.
So that's interesting, right? You had the 30,000-foot view. You had the outside view.
Yeah, and I had a wonderful teacher who was an artistic artist from Oregon Shakespeare Festival, you know, which was like my dream to work. You know? He said to me, "You make choices thinking big picture.
Right.
How come you haven't ever considered going to school for directing?" And I really don't know why I didn't, but he said it, and he told me about the school at North Carolina School of the Arts.
Wow.
I applied for that, got in there, and when I went there, that became really my artistic home, I would say. I was really ready to move to New York, but I knew like only people who had recently graduated, from School of the Arts. I didn't have any connections there.
Right.
So I looked into internships and you could have in those days. I wanted to get somewhere close to the process where I could at least observe sort of how the systems work. Because coming from regional theater, I didn't even know casting was a job. Because often in regional theater, it's the associate artistic director is holding the auditions and you don't have a casting director. I answered an ad to work on Baz Luhrmann's production of Puccini's La Boheme on Broadway.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and it was an ad on Playbill.com to work for like 6 weeks for free. And they wanted someone with an opera background, which I had seen half an opera. But I had seen Moulin Rouge 7 times in the theater. So I was like, let them tell me no. I'm just going to send in my resume. And luckily the casting director, it was at Bernie Telsey Casting, which is what our company was called at that time. But it was Heidi Marshall was the casting director of it. Yeah. And I got an interview and we just clicked. So she hired me.
What do you think, if you look back now and you're generous with yourself and what we know, what did she see? Because Heidi Marshall, I mean, that's a person who, her name rings out in this business for that person to say, you've got something.
I think it might have had something to do with it. She had a directing for the theater degree from Carnegie Mellon, and I had a directing, so we might speak the same language, both similar, kind of American training programs. And really she knew what we were doing was trying to find young opera singers who could act. And so when we would do auditions and work sessions, I was sort of teaching. It would be me in the room or me and Heidi, depending on who was available and what needed to be done. Basically talking opera singers through basic Stanislavski method.
Right. Wow.
What do you want? So take and don't just sing the aria. Let's do it in English as a scene. Let's now do it in Italian. Let's now add the music, kind of what we've all done in drama school, how to break apart scenes and songs and things.
Yes, but you're tailoring your education to these people and the skill set.
I was very comfortable doing that.
Yeah,
right?
that's
what I kind of was trained to do.
Wow.
So that ended up being great. And then Heidi actually went to become Baz Luhrmann's associate director and it left me taking over casting the show.
Wow.
And not only did I get that job, which was amazing, I saw a path to what I wanted, which is to be an associate director on Broadway.
Right.
But that time came and I realized it's casting for me. I didn't want to actually do that.
Was there an aha? Was there a...
Yeah. Working with the kinds of directors I had the opportunity to work with, sometimes working with amazing directors in different genres at the same time. You know, working on a Broadway musical at the same time as I'm working with Jonathan Demme on an independent film.
Amazing.
Things like that, that I realized, you know, when you're a director, you have to be so single-minded on one project at a time.
Absolutely.
And I just think my natural life rhythm loves the multitasking.
That's cool.
You know, and so I decided I want to stay and do this and do it to the best of my ability.
When did you start to realize I can see aesthetically what's needed? I can modulate what an actor's bringing for Demi. I could even maybe take that same actor and present them on Broadway.
Oh, totally. I have had this experience where I've learned from, I was actually doing Sex and the City movie and Rachel getting married at the same time. And we called in a young actress, Annaleigh Ashford, who was playing Glinda in the Broadway production of Wicked at the time. Okay. So she had like platinum blonde hair. And we brought her in for this tiny role in Sex and the City, and she was phenomenal. Like it's a tiny part, but she had thought it through, and it was just amazing. No one could have taken that part from her. Amazing. She came in and just claimed it, and I saw what she did there, and I was just blown away. And then as we started to set up the characters' auditions for Rachel getting married, Bernie was like, let's schedule Annaleigh. And I'm like, not going to be any platinum blonde hair in this movie. Like, it's just not right. And he said, she's good, schedule her. And I said, okay. You know, I was his associate at the time. Or actually, I guess I was co-casting director by that point on that one. So I scheduled her, and I remember I was in the room just doing a session by myself, and I saw that she'd signed in our lobby. I'm looking for her. And I'm like, Annaleigh? And she goes, hi. And she was wearing a wig, like an ash blonde, like very realistic, naturalistic wig. Great. And I looked, and she goes, is this dumb? I just thought there would be no platinum blonde hair in this movie. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I thought, Bernie tells he's right. When someone's good, try them. Wow. And of course, she got it. And she was in every trailer. I think she's been in the trailer of everything I've ever cast her in. Amazing. So she just popped. But it was a big lesson for me to not pigeonhole people, you know, and to really look at them as an artist. And that's where we kind of started our conversation, is looking holistically at the artist and knowing that someone that's incredibly inventive and talented, you gotta try them and see what they do, even though they may have done something completely different for you before. You don't know their process, their prep. My job is not to like convince or push too hard on the director, who has, let's be honest, one of the most difficult jobs out there. Absolutely. You know, the buck stops there. I talk about decision fatigue, right? Every single department, so pushing doesn't help. And that's where I really watched Bernie and realized, like, it's a Jedi mind trick. Right. You know, you have to, or you realize, I know this about this actor. They're not getting it. What can I do to help the process show them, rather than me just tell them they're wrong or something like that? Instead of, what if we do a scene that we haven't been using for the sides? What if we switch up the sides and do this? What if we mix and match? Because I'd love to see them, so you can see like their chemistry they normally have, but we're in a room where they're reading with the reader, me, you know, it's still not the same. You know, maybe improv is the key to it. Like, what can we do to get outside of this process that may have hit a sticking point? Wow.
It's really cool. I mean, honestly, to hear you talk about your process and the way you think about it, because there are so many different things happening at the same time. Because what you're talking about just there, you're recontextualizing, right? You're not, this person isn't being seen in the light that I see them. How do I frame it differently? Whether it's I'm presenting different material, or we try a different style of audition.
Or you call your friend to take them shopping. You know they're never going to get past the fact that they're not wearing the right outfit. Right. And so I mean, could be so dimensional. I mean, that's you're thinking multiple disciplines, and then to have the
the, whether it's calling the friend and getting the new outfit, or to have the exercise that you intuit will free them in just the right way. I mean, it's a big bag full of a lot of different
most of it usually you discover it in desperation.
Okay, yeah.
Because it is really tricky. It's a lot of pressure. It's really the first, I'd say, process where the real decisions are making that are going to shape the film ultimately.
Yeah. Well, they say, some people, I've heard all the greats say it's 90% of the job.
Yes.
Right? Not to take away the other 10%, but I mean, that's a pretty big percentage.
Yeah. It's really, and you have to have empathy for every single person who walks in what I call the coldest room in the world, because one person goes in knowing they could be rejected.
Yeah.
But the other side is one person goes in knowing they have to reject. It is not about rejection. It's about finding the right fit for this film. It's not Simon Cowell saying you have talent and you don't. Something that happens on Zoom that I don't think actors are aware of at all is, like, if you're doing a comedy, typically on Zoom to get the best quality tape, I'm pinning the actor's pinning me, and the rest of the team turns off their camera and sound, but you don't hear the laughing.
Right.
So you're in this weird vacuum. Yeah. And every time my show writer or like the writers come on, they're like, we're so sorry you can't hear us laughing throughout the scene.
Right.
Because it is so weird,
Very strange.
But you also, as an actor, you don't have the job yet. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's one, I would hope that not having the job yet frees you to really play, to show to get excited about something. Yeah. I really feel like your prep has to be getting excited. Yeah. I think we've all experienced, if you've ever done plays, the rehearsals where it's like, oh, I've got rehearsal tonight, right? I can't go to the concert, I've got rehearsal. But you also know when you've been doing the work at home and you've come up with some bits or some jokes or something comes really clear to you, and now you're running to rehearsal to show off your ideas. Yes. I wish actors prepared for auditions like that. Don't worry about what we think, what we want, because we don't know.
We don't.
That's the joke. We're discovering too.
Yes.
So often this is the first time the creative team is even hearing the script out loud.
And honestly, it's taken me a long time, and that's why I think conversations like this and your candor on something like this is so important. It's taken me a long time as an actor to understand what permissions I have in that space, because I love that. And if someone's on the other side asking for that and inviting that, and that, like, not only will that, because the scariest thing in the world is to go, I made up this very funny thing, and then to get, that's inappropriate here. Right? and it's imagined.
I don't think that's ever
it's imagined, to me. But like, we do feel like, God forbid that I go into a room with a balloon.
I recommend not bringing in a weapon.
Well,
I've had that happen where, like, the knife fell out of the pants because it was supposed to be a funny reveal, and I'm like, please don't have a knife. It wasn't a real knife, but it looked like a knife.
But so that's the thing, right? Is we're trying to figure out just what is the parameter, what is the play space, and to have these conversations so that we get, oh no, playfulness, creativity is encouraged, necessary even.
Oh yeah.
And then do it with a degree of preparedness and respect for the material that shows that, like, I'm trying to be in what you're making, but I'm trying to expand the space you're offering me just a little bit with what
get
I'm
it up off the page, and your job is to translate a page into a person. And so have fun with that, right?
Yeah. Just because we're talking about it in this space, how exciting or any other adjectives it feels that your discipline is being recognized at the Academy Awards. Can you just talk about, like, how does that feel? It feels, at least from the outside, like a long time coming.
Yes, I think it is really super exciting, very emotional to know that artists are going to be recognized for their work moving forward. And as you kind of mentioned, all of the films that were in consideration and all get discussed, and it's so great for film, right? Because it sort of adds a new perspective for the audience and for the other craftspeople, because often the best thing about this experience is getting to know the other people that we never get to meet.
Right.
Because we're in pre-production. Right. We're not on set. We're not in the editing room. Yeah. It just felt like the history felt really real and present and shared. Yeah. And so to get to celebrate that in the awards, press tour was really special. It was really special.
Very deserved.
Yeah. So it's been huge, and I'm really excited for the conversations that are going to happen around casting now that there's an award. It really is different. It was exciting. I'm so happy for Cassandra. I absolutely loved One Battle After Another, specifically the casting.
Yeah. She's pretty brilliant.
It was really, really great. I just feel like we really kicked it off.
Yes.
At a very high bar, and that's very exciting.
I think it's a privilege for me to get to hang out with you because I love you, but also to hear just how dynamically creative your position requires you to be. And you're talking about people reimagining them, allowing them to expand and grow. You're talking about text. You said the job of an actor is to go from a page to a person, right? I feel like you are an expert in pages and an expert in persons. And I really do. And so
those are our tools.
Yeah.
Right? Those are our tools for what we do. I do want to shout out part of the creative process I feel like I haven't been specific enough, which is our casting teams and how amazing it is to have a collaboration, obviously with our creative team and our writers and the actors.
Yeah.
But also with my team and our brainstormings, and our pushes of like, I don't like this, and how we learn each other's taste and how we know, this one's going to know the right one for this, and the excitement you feel when the most stoic of you gets excited after a session and comes as like, we haven't, and that creative collaboration, which includes obviously the New York office, our LA office, our associates and assistants, right?
Yeah.
It just helps us to have a group of people to brainstorm with and to think and imagine with. And that we've worked with for a long time, so we really know their taste and we know, what floats their boat and where are the kind of places they look for actors, so that you can maybe go, what, I'm going to on purpose look in this new direction. Let's look and see everyone that was nominated for an Ovation Award last year or the Raw Stage Awards. I remember when I first moved here, I was looking for like, what's the version of Obies?
Yes.
Where are the Obies here? know, and those kinds of ways to discover new talent. And it's really, I'm so blessed in that department with my colleagues at the Telsey office. I mean, it really is. It's a superpower because it's just a family.
And I don't know, from an actor's perspective, the thing I take away most from the conversation is that there are brilliant artists using all the tools, including IMDb Pro, at their disposal to find you, to give you an opportunity that might stretch you or show you in a new light, to trace the seemingly disparate events and make a constellation out of your career, to recognize, where you're coming from and where you could go. And that just feels, it feels like you're part of something. It feels like you're part of a creative community and gives you a little bit more, or at least for me, will give me a little more fire next time I'm making a tape to go, somebody out there is watching this, rooting for me, trying to see what I can do. Let me see if I can bring something that feels brave and feels like me and feels a little bit scary, and know that somebody's catching me on the other side.
Oh, for sure.
So
Well, and thank you for coming in and killing it, because I feel like we have all benefited from knowing you. And I feel like Paradise was our biggest chance that we got and to see what you could really do. And now I just can't wait for what's next.